Welcome to another episode, a lessons learned episode of Not Your Average Lives. And today I wanted to share just something that I had a lesson on. It was more of a reflection lesson. I think lessons are not only an experience that taught us something, but also a realization. And so I think realizations are amazing lessons. And this was more in that bucket of a lesson. And it came up because I posted a reel. If you don't know what a reel is, it's on social media and it's a kind of an Instagram thing, but it's now on Facebook. But I've been having so much fun with them because they allow me to show my silly side. And so it allows me to get messages and points across about things that I think provide value, but in sometimes a joking way or a fun way, or in some ways, sometimes in like a shocking way. And so I found this audio or came across this audio and it had the word fuck in it. And if you know me and you've been listening to my podcast, I think that's the first time I've ever said that word on this podcast. So it's not a word I say very often. I don't say it hardly ever. In fact, I do have a new series that I just started a couple of months ago called Just Friggin' Do It. And so I tend to use replacement words instead of the F word. See, I can't even say it. So I said it once and I was like, I gotta say it. So I realized that I really get triggered by the F word. And so it made me think about words in general and how we get triggered by the words when we think the person is actually triggering us, when it's really the word and the beliefs around the word. So let me first start by just talking about that, and then I'll have some fun with talking about the F word specifically. All right. Because I think there's some generational beliefs around that word. And it's not necessarily just like my personality, but I think I come from a time when people didn't cuss like right and left, because I know my children cuss. They say the F word a lot more than I do. But that's kind of normal in their age bracket. But anyways, we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to get back to the beliefs thing. And essentially we have these beliefs, all kinds of beliefs that are running through our head. And then there's this thing that are called limiting beliefs. And because some beliefs serve us well, some beliefs don't serve us well. And so that's part of what I teach in my school and I help people with, is kind of uncovering, because so many of the ones that are limiting us, we can't even see for ourselves. So it helps to have somebody who works with you. And then I have, of course, a system that helps identify them. And so if you react in a way to a word that's like, or you immediately jump to a conclusion about somebody because of a word they said, whether it's the F word or something else, that is a sign that there is something underneath that. There's probably something that needs a little work underneath that you can actually shift. You can shift that belief to actually serve you versus doesn't serve you. And the other thing too, is a lot of times when people say these words that trigger us, we end up putting judgment on the person based on our belief. Like, that person doesn't align with my belief system, therefore that person is bad or wrong or whatever. And in reality, it's the word and it's the belief behind it, and it's not the person. So, and it's funny because I follow this person and she says, the latest thing is like people put, when they're writing something on social media, they'll put AF. And it's like, at first I was like, what is that? What is that? Oh, that's like as fuck. It's like, like it's being used like as, like in that context, it's like, I'm tired as fuck and, happy as fuck. And it's like, Okay, that's kind of what they do. It's just like this acronym AF, kind of like LOL. But anyways, I follow this person and she just says it so much that it actually kind of turns me off. But she provides so much value. I've learned so much from her. And I just really realize now that it's just my belief around the word. And it has nothing to do with her. It's just her way. It's like she's speaking in this her generation language, right? It's her generation language. And it's just how she expresses herself. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just choose to use it less often. And that is what works for me. And that's fine. Somebody might think I don't use it enough. I need to use it more often. And so, yeah, not using it might be a trigger. But yeah, maybe the word friggin' bothers somebody because I'm not actually saying fuck or fucking or whatever. So yeah, it's very interesting how our beliefs are tied to words. And so I wanted to share that because it was a realization for me. So an example I was trying to use, because I thought, well, I should use something besides fuck as the word fuck. And I should use something like a word that would trigger me in a way, but in a positive way, for example. So the word I came up with words is pug dog. So for instance, like if I'm walking along and I hear somebody say something about their pug dog, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh. And I'll immediately place judgment on the person that they must be an amazing person because they have a pug dog. So, and the only reason for that is because I was raised with pug dogs and my dad loved his pug dogs. We always had a pug dog because my dad just loved them his whole life. And so it's so funny because he's just like, that's just words. It's just words. But in me, it triggers happy thoughts and good people. And that's what I think when I hear that. So it's just very interesting. I would suggest, if this is resonating with you, just start to pay attention to like your reaction to certain words. So anyways, as it relates specifically to the word fuck, I can't believe I've said it so many times on this episode. So if you're like triggered by it, maybe you stopped listening. But if you're still listening, yay, thank you. So the little ditty, I was going to share the little ditty just so you could hear it. But I heard this little audio and I thought, this is something, it made me stop and listen. It made me tune in. And I thought, well, if it resonated with me, then it will resonate with somebody who follows me more than likely. And it's done in a way that it's funny because the word fuck in this audio actually makes it better because they're using it and the way they used it. And so what I like to say about the word is, and I will say it, but I will only say it very, like I said, seldom, because I think it's more powerful. I think words have power. And when you overuse words, they don't have as much power. Now, maybe if you say, I'm tired as fuck, that doesn't need to be powerful, right? It's just, a comment, right? I'm tired. And it's just kind of an emphasis on tired. But I just feel like I want to reserve those big, powerful, and sometimes triggering for some people words for important moments, right? So I just think that they're more effective. I told my kids that when they would say it, in like 3 times in a sentence or in a paragraph, and I'd say, it will be a lot more effective and powerful if you used it just once instead of 3 times. So anyways, so let me share with you the ditty and then you can evaluate it for yourself. Like if it was a better little ditty with the word fuck in it. It's a good day to stop giving a fuck about all the things that keep tripping you up, the things that make you feel like you ain't enough, the people that drag you down instead of, oh, there's no point stressing too much. After all, life's too short to care what everyone's thinking. Yeah, it's a good day to stop giving. Yeah, that just goes on a loop. So yeah, start it over again. But You get it, right? You get it. I mean, it's the cutest little ditty, but it's powerful because of the way it starts. It's a good day to stop giving a fuck. Well, you can't say friggin'. It's stop giving a friggin'. There's not a good replacement word there. And so it's very, very powerful. And so because I was going to do this episode about the word, I thought I would at least do a little research to see, okay, so where did friggin' come from? I like the word friggin', and maybe that's triggers some people because they think, oh, that's the same thing as fuck. Or maybe it's triggering because people are like, well, why won't you use the word fuck? Because she's like too afraid to use it. So who knows what people think when I use that word, but I like it. So I'm going to keep using it. Friggin' actually comes from, so there's friggin' with no G on the end, and then there's frigging. So friggin' is derived from frigging, and frigging is actually from the 15th century. The word originated in the 15th century, way far back, and it actually means to wiggle or rub. And yeah, you can see kind of like where that associated with fuck. and it's funny because it also said when I was researching it that it's one of the few words that became less profane over time because it softens fuck, right? But I thought that was really funny. But then I found this blog post and it was so good. It was written a while back, but it made me laugh and chuckle. But I'm just going to give her a little credit. Cassie Baradis was her name. And, when I was just Googling friggin', it came up. But she posted it back in 2018. But it was so funny because she said, basically the blog post is when to use frickin', flippin', friggin', or freakin'. A guide for those who grew up sheltered. Now, I don't think that I grew up tremendously sheltered. My parents were not religious. I think like, people who are very religious as probably being less using profanity than the non-religious people, but that's just an assumption on my part. But my parents, they would say cuss words, but they didn't say them a lot. It's just very, chose when, and they were effective when they used them, kind of like I do, because I kind of just carried on the tradition of my parents. But somehow my kids, I don't know what I did wrong with them, but I think it was the influence of their peer groups. Anyway, so it's just so funny because all these different replacement words for the word fuck. So flippin', she says, is a lighthearted and affirmative sentiment. And she uses it in a sentence. That detective is so flippin' good at solving mysteries, is how she uses it in a sentence. And then freakin' is a youthful expression of joy and admiration. However, it's a little bit edgy, like getting one ear pierced. So, and then like an example is in a sentence, let's get you a freaking raise. And then there's frickin'. And so frickin' is where the rebellion, she says, really starts to creep in. To use frickin' is to play with fire. So an example is, it's frickin' tax season. That is an example of using frickin'. And then friggin', my favorite replacement word, she says, is an angry word. And then she said, from here, it's a really slippery slope to the F-bomb. So please be careful. Think of your family. So I thought it's so funny. So I don't know, maybe I'm a little, maybe I'm on a slippery slope using that word. And so then she used an example as, I'm so friggin' PO'd. I haven't heard the PO'd for a while. So she's definitely showing her age here. But yeah, so, and she said, when not to use it, this is my friggin' newborn daughter. Yeah, you want to say flippin' for that one. But anyway, so this was a fun little episode just because I wanted to share my realization about my sensitivity to the F word, but yet the fact that I still use it, even though it does like kind of trigger me, but I will use it when I feel that it's going to be the most effective. And I don't think it is super effective when I use it daily. So I don't use it. I don't use it very often at all, but I used it in that reel. And I talked about it in the reel because I was like, oh my gosh, does this offend you? Does this not offend you? Or what do you think about the F word? But I also wanted to use it as an overall lesson in checking in with words in general and how words either make you they either align with a positive belief that you have or a feel good belief that you have, like the pug dog example, or if they trigger this kind of limiting belief, this non-serving belief that is really making you judge someone when in fact it's kind of like uncovering a belief that might be worth, rewiring in that brain. And maybe just checking into, if you've like said, well, that person cusses too much, so I'm not going to like associate with them anymore. Well, it's really not that person. It's your belief about the word the person uses. And that person probably has a whole different belief around that word, has a whole different upbringing and thought process that is comes with the use of that word. So, and again, if it's a younger person, it's a very generational thing, because my kids they're very good kids and they're very well spoken, but they use the F-bomb more than they should, in my opinion. It just is less effective. So that is my lesson for this Friday, and I hope you enjoy it. And shoot me a message if it made you think. All right. And no more F-bombs from this lady unless I'm going to really prove a point, or I stub my toe or something. Like if I stub my toe, that deserves an F-bomb. Definitely not a friggin'. It has to be a fucking A. Something like that just releases that, the pain. I don't know. The pain goes away when you say it. So in those times, it's very necessary, but those are the exceptions. All right. Thanks for listening. Talk to you again next week. Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own Not Your Average life.